Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Sit up, pay attention, because what I'm about to say, most people don't understand it until it's too late. Energy never lies. Let me tell you something right now. When you can't get a man off your mind, when he is sitting in your thoughts from the moment you wake up until your head hits that pillow at night, that is not random. That is not foolishness. That is not you being desperate. That is energy moving. And energy does not move in one direction. It travels both ways. See, people think thoughts are small. They think it's just imagination. But thoughts carry emotion, and emotion carries frequency. When you think about somebody deeply, not casually, not surface level, but deeply, with feeling attached, that energy leaves you. It travels. And somewhere, at some unexpected moment in his day, he feels something shift. He might be in the middle of work, focused on a task, and suddenly your face flashes across his mind. He doesn't even know why. He might be driving, music playing, and a song reminds him of you out of nowhere. He might check his phone without a notification, almost expecting your name to pop up. That's energy responding. You see, connection is invisible but powerful. When two people share a real moment, a laugh that felt different, a conversation that went deeper than usual, eye contact that lasted a second too long, that creates an imprint. And imprints don't disappear just because you walked away or stopped talking as much. Energy remembers. When you constantly feel him in your spirit, it often means there was something unfinished. Not necessarily drama, not necessarily conflict, but something incomplete, something that didn't get to fully express itself. And that unfinished energy creates a loop. You think about him because the connection hasn't closed. And guess what? He feels that open loop too. Men don't always process feelings the same way women do. A woman will sit with her emotions and analyze them. A man might distract himself. He'll bury himself in work, in friends, in routine. But energy doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It shows up in small cracks. He might find himself defending you when someone mentions your name. He might compare other women's reactions to yours. He might remember details about you that he thought he forgot. The way you laughed when you were nervous, the way you looked at him when you were serious. Those memories resurface because energy is knocking. Here's something else. When energy is mutual, timing starts to act strange. You think about texting him, and then suddenly he texts you. You're about to move on emotionally, and he reappears. That's not magic. That's alignment trying to recalibrate. Now listen carefully. Energy never lies, but it also never forces. If you're constantly thinking about him with peace in your heart, with warmth, that's usually a sign of a healthy connection. But if your thoughts feel anxious, heavy, desperate, that's not mutual energy. That's attachment without balance. Real energetic connection feels calm even when it's strong. It doesn't make you lose yourself. It doesn't make you shrink. It simply reminds you that something meaningful happened. So when a man is on your mind all the time, understand this. Your spirit recognizes something. And whether it leads to reunion, growth, or closure, the energy between two people always reveals the truth eventually. A man feels when he's being thought about more than most women realize. Now, I know some of y'all think men are clueless. You think they walk around unaware, disconnected, emotionally blind. That's not true. A man may not always express what he feels, but that does not mean he doesn't feel it. When a woman is thinking about a man constantly, with depth, with emotion, with focus, something shifts on his side too. See, when you hold someone in your thoughts repeatedly, especially with strong emotion attached, you create a subtle psychological connection. Humans are wired for emotional awareness. We pick up on patterns. We sense changes in attention. That man may not wake up and say, "She's thinking about me today." But he will experience something unusual. He'll feel restless for no clear reason. He'll feel the urge to check your social media. He'll suddenly remember something you said weeks ago. That is his subconscious responding. Men are highly responsive to attention, especially from a woman who impacted them. If you mattered to him even a little bit, if there was chemistry, laughter, vulnerability, then your energy doesn't just disappear from his system. It lingers. And when you think about him deeply, it's almost like pressing on that memory again. It activates. He might find himself pausing in the middle of the day, wondering what you're doing. He might feel a sudden curiosity about whether you're talking to someone new. He may even feel a slight discomfort, like something is unfinished. That discomfort, that's awareness. That's him sensing that the connection still exists somewhere. Now here's the part people don't talk about. Men often feel emotions physically before they understand them mentally. A woman will analyze her feelings. A man will experience them in his body first. Tightness in the chest, restlessness, sudden nostalgia, a desire to reach out. He may not label it as, "she's thinking about me," but he feels the shift. And if there was real emotional impact between you, he cannot escape that imprint. You ever notice how sometimes, just when you're about to detach, just when you start telling yourself, "I'm done thinking about him," he pops up? A text, a call, a reaction to your story. That's not random timing. Often it's because he's been feeling the weight of your absence at the same time you've been feeling his presence in your thoughts. Men also respond to emotional memory. If you were supportive when he was stressed, if you understood him when others didn't, if you made him feel respected, that sticks. And when you think about him repeatedly, you're often revisiting those moments in your mind. Guess what? He revisits them too, especially in quiet moments. He may even test the waters, send something casual, keep it light, pretend it's nothing serious. But behind that simple message is a man trying to figure out if the connection still exists on your side the way he feels it on his. Now, don't misunderstand this. Not every thought means destiny. Not every connection is lifelong. But when the thinking is consistent, calm, and strong, and it doesn't fade with time, it usually means the emotional bond was mutual. A man feels when he's being held in someone's spirit. He may not have the language for it, he may not admit it out loud, but internally, something shifts. And when that shift happens, he starts moving differently. Emotional connection travels both ways, whether people admit it or not. When two individuals share a genuine moment, not just attraction, not just surface conversation, but something deeper, that emotional imprint doesn't sit on one side alone. It embeds itself in both hearts. So when you find yourself thinking about him constantly, replaying conversations, remembering how he looked at you, feeling that subtle pull in your chest, understand this clearly. Emotional connection is rarely one-sided when it's real. Human beings are wired for reciprocity. When someone affects us emotionally, our brain records it. The tone of their voice, the way they made us feel seen, the comfort in their presence. All of that becomes part of our internal memory system. So if you're carrying him in your thoughts over and over, chances are there was depth involved. And depth leaves a mark on both people. He may not show it the same way. Men are often conditioned to process emotion differently. A woman might sit quietly and reflect. A man might stay busy, distract himself, dive into work or routine. But distraction is not erasure. Emotional energy doesn't disappear because someone avoids it. It waits, and it resurfaces in quiet moments, late at night, early in the morning, in between tasks. When connection is mutual, both people experience echoes. You think about him randomly at 3 p.m. Somewhere in his day, he remembers your smile. You suddenly feel the urge to check his profile. He wonders how you've been. Emotional alignment creates subtle synchronization. It's not mystical, it's psychological. When two nervous systems bond, they create familiarity, and the body always recognizes familiarity. You might notice small patterns. Just when you start missing him more intensely, he becomes more visible again. Maybe he interacts with your content. Maybe he reaches out with something simple. Maybe he brings up a memory you were just thinking about. That's because connection forms pathways in the mind. When one person activates it strongly through thought and emotion, the other often feels a ripple. Emotional bonds also influence behavior indirectly. If he felt valued by you, respected by you, understood by you, those feelings don't vanish easily. When he interacts with others, he subconsciously compares emotional safety. If another conversation feels shallow compared to what he had with you, he notices. If another presence lacks the warmth you offered, he senses the difference. There's also something powerful about unresolved emotional connection. When two people part ways without true closure, no deep conversation, no final understanding, the bond stays slightly open. That openness keeps thoughts circulating on both sides. You may feel like you're the only one replaying memories, but often he is too, just in quieter ways. Real connection is calm but persistent. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it simply lingers. It shows up in moments of nostalgia. It appears in comparisons. It influences choices. And when you constantly feel him on your mind without force, without obsession, but with steady presence, that's usually a sign that the emotional current never fully disconnected. Connection is not about constant communication, it's about impact. If you impacted him emotionally, if he felt something genuine in your presence, then the bond travels internally, even in silence. And when it travels on your side, it almost always travels on his as well. His behavior starts to shift, and that's one of the clearest signs something is happening beneath the surface. When a man feels a woman strongly in his thoughts, even if he doesn't understand why, it begins to influence how he moves. Not dramatically at first, not in obvious ways, but subtly, consistently. You have to understand something about men. A man's feelings show up in his actions long before they show up in his words. He might not sit down and confess, "I can't stop thinking about you." That's not how most men operate. Instead, his behavior starts telling the story. He may begin checking on you more often, the texts become slightly more frequent, the conversations stretch a little longer. He asks questions that go deeper than surface talk. That shift doesn't happen randomly. It usually happens because you've been heavy on his mind and he's trying to close the distance he suddenly feels. Sometimes the shift is even quieter. He watches your stories quickly. He notices small changes about you. He remembers details you mentioned in passing weeks ago. When a man starts holding on to details, that's emotional engagement. And emotional engagement doesn't appear without internal stimulation. If you've been thinking about him constantly, especially with genuine feeling, chances are the emotional cord between you hasn't broken. And when that cord stays active, it influences behavior. He might start showing up where he knows you'll be. He might accidentally bring up shared memories. He might send something that reminds him of you. Now here's the important part. Behavior shifts don't always mean grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the tone. He becomes softer, less defensive, more curious, more patient. That's because emotional awareness often humbles a man. When he realizes someone still occupies space in his mind, it makes him reflect. He may also start adjusting himself, improving himself. If he feels that connection still exists, a part of him may want to show growth. Men are wired to prove value. So if you're consistently on his mind, he may begin making changes subconsciously, working harder, focusing more, trying to level up, because emotionally, he still sees you as significant. There's another side to this too. If he senses your emotional presence, but feels unsure about timing, pride, or circumstances, his behavior might become inconsistent, hot and cold, close and distant. That inconsistency often reflects internal conflict. He feels something, but he's figuring out how to handle it. Watch patterns, not promises. If he keeps circling back, if he keeps reappearing after periods of silence, that usually means the connection hasn't left him alone. Men don't repeatedly return to something that means nothing. And here's something powerful. When you stop chasing, when you become calm and centered within yourself, that's often when his behavior becomes clearer, because now his actions aren't reacting to your pursuit, they're responding to his own feelings. Behavior is the language of emotion for many men. If he's shifting, adjusting, reaching, remembering, showing up, even in small ways, that's internal movement. And internal movement usually starts with a thought that wouldn't leave him alone. He's comparing you, even if he never says it out loud. When a woman stays on a man's mind consistently, especially after there has been some level of emotional connection, something powerful begins happening internally. Men measure experiences, they measure feelings, they measure how someone made them feel. And once you've made a real emotional imprint, every new interaction gets unconsciously compared to you. Now understand this clearly. Comparison doesn't always mean he's sitting around obsessing. It's more subtle than that. It shows up in moments. He's talking to someone new and she laughs differently. It doesn't hit the same. He shares a thought and she doesn't quite understand the depth of it the way you did. He notices the difference. Maybe he doesn't admit it. Maybe he doesn't even fully process it. But the comparison is happening. When a connection is strong, the nervous system remembers comfort, it remembers safety, it remembers chemistry. If you made him feel respected, heard, admired, that becomes a standard. And once a standard is set emotionally, it's hard to lower it without feeling the lack. You ever notice how sometimes men return after trying something else? It's often because the emotional comparison didn't work in their favor. They thought the grass might be greener. They thought maybe it was just timing. But when the emotional depth isn't there, when the spark feels forced, they start remembering you more clearly. Comparison also shows up in silence. He may scroll past your picture and pause longer than he planned to. He may hear your name and feel a slight shift in his chest. That shift is recognition. It's the mind recalling impact. It's the heart recalling familiarity. Here's something important. Men value emotional uniqueness more than they admit. If you brought something into his life that felt rare, peace, motivation, understanding, warmth, that doesn't get replaced easily. And when he interacts with others who don't quite match that frequency, the contrast becomes clear. Even if he's with someone else, comparison still happens. Not necessarily in a disloyal way, but in an internal awareness way. She doesn't talk to me like that. She doesn't challenge me the way she did. She doesn't make me feel as calm. These are quiet thoughts, but they carry weight. Comparison can also create confusion for him, because now he has to ask himself why you still stand out, why you still linger mentally, why your presence still feels strong even in absence. And when a man starts asking those questions internally, it means the connection left a mark. Now here's the key. Comparison doesn't guarantee action. Pride, fear, ego, timing, all of those things can slow a man down. But internally, once you become the emotional benchmark, you don't easily disappear from his system. When a woman stays consistently on a man's mind, it usually means she gave him something that felt different. And different is hard to replace. Different becomes memorable. And memorable becomes the quiet standard he measures others against, whether he admits it or not. Your thoughts are a signal, not an accident. When someone stays on your mind constantly, not for a day, not for a passing moment, but repeatedly, consistently, there is meaning attached to that. The human mind does not hold on to things without reason, especially not emotionally charged thoughts. When a man occupies your mental space over and over again, it is usually because something unresolved, something significant, or something transformative happened between you. Now understand this clearly. A signal is not the same thing as a guarantee. Just because you're thinking about him doesn't automatically mean wedding bells are ringing, but it does mean there is awareness. It means something in you was activated. Something in your spirit recognized depth. Sometimes the signal is about alignment. Two people meet, and the timing isn't perfect. The circumstances aren't right. Maybe growth hasn't finished yet. But the connection is real. So even when life pulls you apart physically, the mental and emotional signal continues. You think about him because part of you senses unfinished potential. Other times, the signal is about a lesson. When someone changes you, challenges you, pushes you emotionally, your mind revisits that experience because it's processing growth. You're not just thinking about him. You're thinking about who you were when you were with him, what you learned, how you evolved. And here's something powerful, my sons. When thoughts are calm but persistent, that usually indicates clarity trying to form. When thoughts are chaotic and anxious, that may signal attachment. There's a difference. A true signal feels steady. It doesn't make you lose sleep every night. It simply reminds you that something meaningful occurred. Your mind also seeks closure when something feels incomplete. If there were words unsaid, emotions unexpressed, timing misaligned, your thoughts will circle back to that experience until understanding forms. That doesn't mean you're weak. It means your brain is wired for resolution. Now here's where it gets deeper. Signals often come before action. When someone remains on your mind in a peaceful but strong way, it may be preparing you for a conversation, a reunion, or even a final release. Awareness always comes before movement. And sometimes the signal isn't about him at all. Sometimes it's about you, about recognizing your own capacity to feel deeply, about understanding what type of connection truly moves you. When a man stays on your mind, it reveals what matters to you emotionally. But here's the balance. Don't chase a signal. Observe it. If the connection is mutual, life will create opportunity. If it's meant to grow, circumstances will align. If it's meant to close, clarity will come. Thoughts are powerful indicators. They reflect where your emotional energy is invested. And when someone occupies that space repeatedly without force, it means there was significance there. So if he's on your mind constantly, don't panic. Don't romanticize blindly either. Simply recognize it as information. Your thoughts are communicating something. And whether that message leads to growth together or growth apart, it's never random.